Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Tuesday, March 17th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by Area and DjamgaMind. Today, we are unraveling the biggest financial projection in tech history, Nvidia's $1 trillion chip sales target. But the story isn't just about the money, it's about where those chips are going. From orbital data centers to $200,000 robot dogs guarding the facilities. We're also talking about Meta's local desktop agent launch, OpenAI's decision to kill its side quests, and why being an AI wrapper in 2026 is a death sentence for your startup. Let's get into the news.
So today, there is a four-legged robotic dog armed with thermal sensors and acoustic anomaly detectors, and it's aggressively patrolling the perimeter of a data center in Nevada.
Right, just aggressively protecting server racks that are, processing corporate intelligence way faster than humanly possible.
Exactly. And roughly, 400 miles straight up above that dog in low Earth orbit, a satellite is doing the exact same computational work, but in the absolute vacuum of space.
It's wild to even picture.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. You know exactly why you're here. Today, we're acting as your forensic financial analysts and your AI infrastructure architects.
Yeah, we're cutting through the noise. We are going to deconstruct this massive, completely silent pivot that just occurred across the entire tech sector.
Right, because it's a pivot that the mainstream media is, frankly, completely misinterpreting right now.
Oh, entirely. If you watch the coverage of the Nvidia GTC conference in San Jose back on March 17th, you just saw the theater of the consumer upgrade cycle.
Yeah, 30,000 people in an arena, Jensen Huang doing his 3-hour keynote.
Exactly. And the headlines were just obsessing over DLSS5, right? Using AI to generate real-time photorealistic lighting in video games.
Which, look, it's a brilliant piece of software engineering.
Sure it is, but it is a total magician's sleight of hand. The era of pure experimentation of these, consumer-facing party tricks, that era is dead.
Completely dead. And that's our core mission for this deep dive today. We are ripping away all that consumer marketing hype to expose the underlying System 2 structural shifts happening in the enterprise bedrock.
Yeah, we're tracking what I would call a brutal, highly cynical fortification.
Fortification is the perfect word for it.
It really is. The major players, they aren't interested in showing you how smart their abstract cloud models are anymore. They are physically militarizing their data centers.
Right, blasting infrastructure into orbit to solve literally insurmountable physics problems.
Yep, and quietly orchestrating a total takeover of the local physical hardware sitting on your desk right now.
So to understand the sheer scale of this fortification, I think we have to look at the financial architecture Nvidia just laid out.
The $1 trillion projection.
Exactly. They are officially projecting $1 trillion in AI chip sales by the end of 2027.
$1 trillion.
Yeah.
Driven almost entirely by their new Blackwell and Rubin architectures.
But, as forensic analysts, we don't just look at the raw volume of the revenue, right? We have to look at the mechanical composition of the silicon that's actually generating that revenue.
Right. And the signal that cut through all the noise at GTC, at least for me, was the unveiling of the Groq 3 LPX rack.
Let me actually stop you right there, because the specs on this Groq 3 LPX rack are exactly what ticked me off to this whole structural shift.
Yeah, the density is insane.
It is. We are looking at a system that combines 72 Vera Rubin servers with 256 of these new language processing units, or LPUs.
Which is a massive departure.
Exactly. For the last 5 years, the whole global economy has been bottlenecked by GPUs, right? Graphics processing units. So why are we suddenly seeing this trillion-dollar pivot toward LPUs?
Well, it's because the architectural demands of the AI economy have fundamentally inverted. We've spent the last half-decade entirely in the training phase.
The heavy lifting phase.
Exactly. To train a massive frontier model, you have to feed it petabytes of data and calculate billions of probabilistic weights simultaneously.
And GPUs were literally built for that, right? Since they were originally designed for rendering video game graphics like calculating the lighting of 1 million pixels all at the exact same time.
Right. That parallel processing capability made GPUs the perfect engine for the simultaneous heavy lifting of AI training. But training is just the cost of entry.
Right.
The actual revenue generation comes from inference.
When the user or the enterprise actually asks the model to do something.
Exactly. When you ask it to generate a response.
You know, it's like we spent billions of dollars in half a decade building the world's most complex, massive printing presses.
I love this analogy.
Right. We obsessed over the gears, the mechanics, the sheer size of the machines. But now the presses are built. The heavy design and training phase is essentially over.
Right.
So this new $1 trillion economy isn't about building more presses. It's entirely about selling the ink and distributing the printed newspapers as fast and as cheaply as humanly possible.
That is the absolute perfect analogy for what we call inference-first economics. And the thing about inference is, it's not a parallel process. It's sequential.
Right. One word at a time.
Exactly. When an AI generates a legal contract or a block of code, it doesn't just output the whole document all at once.
Yeah.
It predicts it, token by token, word by word, in a linear sequence.
And GPUs are actually terrible at that.
They're highly inefficient at sequential token generation, yeah. They suffer from what we call the von Neumann bottleneck.
Which is basically a traffic jam on the motherboard.
Pretty much. The compute cores have to constantly stop, reach across the motherboard into the high bandwidth memory, fetch the model weights, bring them back, calculate the next word, and repeat.
And that constant travel just creates massive latency.
Yep.
So the LPU, the language processing unit, physically solves that latency bottleneck.
Precisely. An LPU basically strips out the parallel matrix engines. Instead, it surrounds the compute cores with massive amounts of SRAM static random access memory.
So the memory's right there.
Exactly. The entire neural network model is loaded directly onto the chip itself, right next to the processor.
Wow.
So there's no waiting, there's no fetching from external memory. The data just flows through the chip in a deterministic synchronous pipeline.
Which is the literal definition of deterministic decoding.
You got it.
And that phrase, you know, deterministic decoding, it just kept coming up in all the enterprise briefings. Yeah. And when you strip away all the tech jargon, it just means absolute mathematical predictability. Right?
That's exactly what it means.
Because if you're a massive logistics corp running your global supply chain through an AI or a massive financial institution running algorithmic trading, you can't tolerate latency spikes.
No, you absolutely cannot.
And you definitely can't tolerate the probabilistic hallucinations of a GPU cluster. You need an engine that guarantees it will generate exactly 800 tokens per second every single time with zero deviation.
And you are hitting on the exact reason why the Groq 3 LPX rack, armed with 256 of these LPUs, is the absolute death knell for the training dominance era.
It's just a totally different paradigm.
It is. This hardware isn't built for learning. It's built purely for executing. It allows an enterprise to serve outputs at a scale and speed that, frankly, finally justifies the initial multi-billion-dollar investments they made to train the models in the first place.
Right. But, and this is a huge but, this shift to inference-first economics creates a catastrophic physical problem. The heat. Because if inference is this lucrative, you want to run it constantly, right? At maximum capacity. And when you run 72 Vera Rubin servers and 256 LPUs at maximum capacity, the sheer thermal output just breaks earthly constraints.
It really does. Which brings us to, honestly, the most surreal yet logically inevitable announcement from the entire GTC news cycle.
Oh man, the space stuff?
The space stuff. Nvidia didn't just announce earthly servers. They unveiled the Vera Rubin Space One module.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's real.
Very real. They are explicitly engineering inference compute utilizing IGX Thor and Jensen Orin chips to be blasted into low Earth orbit.
They are literally building orbital data centers.
Because when you look at the thermal dynamics of a modern inference data center on Earth, you quickly realize we are just maxing out the physical limitations of our local environment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a single massive data center today requires the electrical equivalent of a small city just to power the chips.
And millions of gallons of water to cool them. The grid infrastructure in regions like, Northern Virginia or the Pacific Northwest, it simply cannot support the $1 trillion of new silicon Nvidia is about to deploy.
The earthly real estate that has both high-capacity fiber optics and massive untapped water and power reserves, it's effectively gone.
It's totally tapped out.
But, the physics of space cooling have always kind of confused me.
Oh, confuses a lot of people.
Right, because you see the engineering reports pointing out that cooling remains a massive hurdle in orbit because space lacks convection. But the general assumption is always, well, space is close to absolute zero, so you just put a hot server out there and it instantly freezes.
Right. That's the Hollywood version of space.
So why is thermal management in orbit actually harder than on Earth?
It's a fundamental misunderstanding of thermodynamics. Heat transfer requires a medium.
Right.
On Earth, we use convection. The server gets hot, the air around the server gets hot, fans blow that hot air away, and cooler air replaces it.
Or we use liquid cooling, where water absorbs the heat and carries it to a chilling tower.
Exactly. But space is a vacuum. There's no air. There's no water. There is absolutely nothing to absorb and carry the heat away. The only way to cool a machine in a vacuum is through thermal radiation.
Meaning the server has to literally emit its heat as infrared light, just radiating it away into the void.
Exactly. And relying purely on the Stefan-Boltzmann law of thermal radiation is incredibly inefficient compared to earthly convection.
So you have to build these massive, sprawling radiator fins just to maximize the surface area.
Huge fins. And furthermore, while deep space is cold, if your satellite happens to be facing the sun, the solar radiation hitting your equipment will boil it instantly.
Because there's no atmosphere to filter or diffuse the sun's energy?
Right, so it's an engineering nightmare of extreme temperature differentials.
So if the thermal engineering is that much of a nightmare and the launch costs are astronomical, why are we doing this? I mean, the CapEx to put an IGX Thor chip into low Earth orbit has to be thousands of times higher than just racking it in a warehouse in Texas.
It is. But because what space lacks in convective cooling, it makes up for in two critical, inexhaustible resources.
Which are?
Absolute, unlimited real estate and unhindered, continuous solar energy.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
You don't have to fight local municipalities for zoning permits. You don't have to worry about the local power grid collapsing during a heat wave. If you can solve the radiative cooling engineering, you have access to a 247 solar power source that is never filtered by clouds or an atmosphere.
And that brings the strategic maneuvering of Elon Musk into sharp forensic focus.
Oh, the SpaceX acquisition.
Yeah, when the news broke that SpaceX acquired xAI for $1.25 trillion, the consumer markets reacted as if it were just, an internal corporate shuffling of Musk's portfolio.
Just moving money from one pocket to another.
Right. But then SpaceX filed an FCC petition to launch 1 million satellites, specifically designated as orbital AI nodes.
And when you contextualize an acquisition of $1.25 trillion alongside the deployment of 1 million orbital compute nodes, the System 2 structural truth becomes completely unavoidable.
The ultimate footprint for the world's most critical data infrastructure won't be terrestrial at all.
No. The inference engines of the future, the systems dictating global financial flows, logistics, corporate intelligence, they are moving to the ultimate high ground.
A mesh network of 1 million satellites provides a sovereign, untouchable data center that hovers completely above the jurisdictional laws and physical constraints of Earth.
It effectively removes the foundational layer of the global economy from earthly geography.
Which is terrifying and brilliant. But that transition is going to take, what, a decade to fully realize?
At least.
Which forces us to look at the massive vulnerabilities of the infrastructure that is currently stuck here on the ground.
Right, the terrestrial assets.
Yeah. Because if inference compute is so valuable that we're redesigning the physics of cooling just to blast it into the vacuum of space, how are these corporations protecting the trillion-dollar physical assets they currently operate down here?
Well, they're fortifying them with a level of militarization that we honestly haven't seen outside of national defense protocols.
The data centers processing this inference load are rapidly transitioning into the era of autonomous perimeter security.
The capital expenditure shifts here are just staggering.
The deployment logs are fascinating. I mean, we're looking at major AI infrastructure providers deploying fleets of four-legged robot dogs to patrol their server farms 204/7.
Right, the Boston Dynamics units.
Yeah, Boston Dynamics is moving massive volume of their Spot robots, which start at roughly $165,000 a unit.
And that's just for the inside.
Right. For external perimeter defense, they're buying Ghost Robotics Vision 60 units, which price out at nearly $300,000 each.
So let's run the forensic financial analysis on those deployments.
Please.
Historically, physical security at a data center was an operational expense, an OpEx. You hired a third-party security firm, you paid human guards an hourly wage, and you installed a network of static CCTV cameras.
It was a marginal line item on the balance sheet.
Exactly. But today, physical security is a massive capital expenditure, a CapEx.
Yeah.
You are amortizing a $300,000 piece of autonomous robotics over a 3-year hardware cycle.
Which begs the question, why would a CFO authorize a multi-million-dollar fleet of robotic dogs when human guards are so much cheaper?
Well, the official public relations spin from the AI companies is incredibly sanitized.
Oh, of course. They claim these robots are merely there to, quote, augment the human workforce, end quote.
Right, to walk the server halls and check for liquid leaks from the cooling pipes or to monitor the ambient temperature.
Just helpful little robotic assistants.
Yeah, that's the marketing narrative designed to keep local regulators and the public calm.
But the reality...
The reality requires us to look at the sensor payloads on these units. These robotic dogs are equipped with high-fidelity acoustic anomaly detectors, advanced LiDAR, and military-grade thermal imaging.
Right.
A human security guard walking down a server aisle cannot hear the microscopic 400 Hz whine of a ball bearing beginning to fail inside the cooling fan of a Groq 3 LPX rack.
But a Boston Dynamics Spot Dog can.
Exactly. It can detect the acoustic signature of a hardware failure weeks before the system overheats. It can detect a thermal leak in a specific LPU casing that is completely invisible to the human eye.
So the initial value proposition is preventative maintenance. I mean, when your corporate valuation is tied to deterministic decoding and guaranteeing absolute uptime for your enterprise clients, an LPU cluster going offline doesn't just cost you repair fees.
No, it costs you millions of dollars an hour in lost inference revenue.
Right, so the $300,000 dog pays for itself the first time it prevents a rack from melting down.
Precisely.
But I have to push back on the broader narrative here.
Okay, go ahead.
Are we seeing this deployment of ghost robotics units patrolling the exterior fences because there's a genuine, quantifiable physical threat of corporate espionage or sabotage? Or is this just a symptom of AI companies having such immense, unlimited venture capital that they're preemptively treating their server farms like nuclear missile silos just because they can afford to?
The math suggests it is not paranoia. It is a recalibration of what these assets actually represent.
Okay.
Look, a data center is no longer just an IT closet hosting websites and email servers. These facilities are the sovereign strategic engines of the modern economy.
Because they're generating the inference that builds software, discovers pharmaceuticals, and runs financial markets?
Exactly. Any physical disruption, whether by a foreign state actor, an industrial spy, or domestic sabotage, represents a catastrophic vulnerability.
So compute power is actively being reclassified, both economically and politically, as classified national defense infrastructure.
Yes, which perfectly contextualizes the geopolitical maneuvers we are seeing in the European theater right now.
Ah, the UK's quantum shield.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
The UK government's recent announcement of the £1 billion Quantum Shield initiative is the exact same fortification instinct, just applied to human capital and cryptography rather than physical servers.
It's a brilliant example of state-level recognition of this new reality. The explicit stated purpose of that $1 billion government intervention is to stop what they're calling the quantum brain drain to Silicon Valley.
Right. The UK has realized that raw compute talent, quantum-safe encryption research, and advanced algorithmic engineering are sovereign resources.
You can't just allow your top tier of intellectual infrastructure to be hired away by Meta or OpenAI.
No, you can't. So they are erecting financial and regulatory walls to lock that talent within their own borders.
So whether we're talking about American corporations buying fleets of robotic dogs to guard terrestrial server farms, or Elon Musk launching 1 million satellites to create an untouchable orbital inference mesh, or the UK government dropping £1 billion to physically trap quantum engineers inside their borders.
The walls are going up.
The infrastructure is being locked down.
And maintaining that level of fortification funding, a $1 trillion hardware transition, while simultaneously militarizing your physical perimeters, that requires an absolute ruthless financial discipline that the tech sector honestly hasn't practiced in over a decade.
Right, because the math is inescapable. You cannot burn billions of dollars on orbital data centers and $300,000 security robots if your software division is bleeding cash on consumer novelties.
The era of zero interest rate experimentation is over. Completely.
Which explains the absolute bloodbath occurring inside OpenAI right now.
Oh, the restructuring.
Yes. The internal restructuring documents make it incredibly clear. OpenAI is officially massacring their side project.
It's a total pivot.
They are aggressively pivoting their entire operational focus toward 2 specific pillars: enterprise coding tools and massive B2B corporate integration.
This is the defining characteristic of what I call the consolidation phase of 2026. The market's tolerance for party tricks, for magical demos that generate Twitter engagement but zero recurring revenue. That tolerance has evaporated.
Totally. And the internal memo from Fidji Simo, who is OpenAI's CEO of applications, it's a masterpiece of corporate course correction.
She did not mince words.
She really didn't. She explicitly cited Anthropic's massive success in capturing the enterprise sector as a wake-up call for the entire company.
Right. She told her engineering teams that OpenAI can no longer afford to be distracted by what she literally called side quests.
When the CEO of Applications refers to the consumer-facing products that historically built the company's entire public brand as side quests, you are witnessing a profound structural purge.
It's an acknowledgement that the unit economics of consumer AI are fundamentally broken.
So let's run the unit economics on that, because the failure of Sora is the perfect case study here.
Oh, absolutely.
Sora was supposed to be the holy grail of consumer AI, right? A text-to-video generator capable of creating photorealistic, physics-accurate cinematic footage.
And when it launched, it topped the Apple App Store. The hype was deafening.
But the internal usage data shows that engagement went completely flat almost immediately after the initial novelty wore off.
Because you have to look at the compute cost versus the revenue retention.
Right.
Generating a visually stunning 10-second video of a woolly mammoth walking through a neon-lit Tokyo requires an immense amount of parallel GPU processing power.
It costs OpenAI dollars per generation in pure electricity and compute degradation.
And what's the return on investment? A consumer watches the video, posts it to social media, gets a quick dopamine hit, and then churns.
Right. They cancel their $20 a month subscription because an average person doesn't actually need to generate cinematic video every single day.
Exactly. The cost of goods sold
The COGS.
radically outpaces the lifetime value of the consumer.
Exactly. Now compare that to a B2B enterprise coding tool.
9-day.
You deploy a highly optimized deterministic coding copilot to a team of senior software engineers at a Fortune 500 company.
It costs a fraction of the compute to run a sequence of text-based code generation compared to rendering 4K video.
And it saves each engineer 2 hours of grunt work a day. The enterprise is incredibly happy to pay $50 or $200 a month per seat.
And the churn rate is essentially zero because the tool becomes deeply embedded in their daily operational workflow.
High margin, low compute overhead, zero churn.
That is wrapper-free enterprise bedrock. It is the only way to fund the trillion-dollar infrastructure demands of the inference era.
And we're seeing the financial pressure of those infrastructure demands forcing OpenAI into another massive structural retreat. You noted the restructuring of their Stargate computing team.
Yes. The Stargate initiative was originally framed as OpenAI's grand ambition to build their own proprietary sovereign data centers to free themselves from relying entirely on Microsoft's Azure infrastructure.
But the new directive is a complete reversal.
Total 180.
OpenAI is abandoning the construction of physical data centers entirely. Their new strategy is to lease compute, to rent AI servers rather than build them.
As forensic financial analysts, we have to recognize this for what it is, an admission of physical and capital defeat. Building, powering, and cooling infrastructure at the scale required in 2026 demands a level of liquid capital and physical engineering that even a titan like OpenAI finds restrictive. They cannot afford to play the real estate game anymore.
Let me make sure I really understand the gravity of this. OpenAI, arguably the most famous AI company on the planet, is basically admitting they cannot compete with the infrastructure balance sheets of Meta or Nvidia.
Yep.
They are stepping out of the foundational real estate game just to rent the penthouse apartment.
Because the cost of building the apartment building has gone exponential. Look at their competitors. In this exact same news cycle, Meta finalized a $27 billion agreement with Nebius to deploy dedicated AI cloud infrastructure.
$27 billion.
Exactly. Explicitly securing one of the first massive, large-scale deployments of the Nvidia Vera Rubin platform.
$27 billion just for the deployment and hosting layer. It's unfathomable scale.
When your primary competitor is writing a $27 billion check just to rack their servers, shifting from a CapEx building strategy to an OpEx leasing strategy is a defensive survival mechanism for OpenAI.
They have to preserve their capital to focus entirely on the enterprise logic layer.
And this brutal consolidation isn't just happening at the apex predator level either. The venture capital ecosystem is aggressively purging the weak from the bottom up.
Which brings us to the Google and Accel Atoms program in India.
Oh, this is the perfect example.
Right. If you want a perfect data-driven encapsulation of the 2026 technology landscape, this is it. Google and the venture firm Accel launched this program to fund early-stage AI startups. Millions of dollars in funding, massive Google compute credits on the line.
The statistics from this program are basically a graveyard for the 2023 hype cycle. break down the applicant pool.
So, according to Priyank Swaroop, the partner at Accel managing the program, 70% of the initial applicants were categorized strictly as AI wrappers.
And we all know the wrapper business model.
Yep.
A startup doesn't actually train or own a foundational model. They just build a slick user interface or a highly specific workflow feature on top of OpenAI or Anthropic's API.
The wrapper model is the definition of API dependency. Your entire corporate moat is built on rented land.
Right.
If the underlying model provider decides to release a minor update that mimics your feature, your startup is dead overnight. And the venture capitalists know this.
They know it intimately, which is why out of the final cohort of startups that actually won the funding and the compute credits in the Adams program, 0% of them were wrappers.
A 0% survival rate.
0.
The venture capital spigot for superficial futures has been welded shut. The market is exclusively demanding wrapper-free innovation.
Right.
If you are not building proprietary foundational technology, or if you are not providing a deeply integrated, indispensable enterprise tool that owns its own data workflow, you are fundamentally unfundable. The ecosystem has zero patience for middlemen renting API calls.
This creates a fascinating and, frankly, terrifying vacuum.
Well, if OpenAI is retreating to the B2B enterprise cloud, and the venture capitalists are systematically starving the consumer wrappers to death, it leaves the actual consumer endpoint, the personal computer, sitting on your desk wide open. And that is the exact vulnerability Meta is striking with surgical precision.
This brings us to Meta's acquisition of Manus and the launch of the application they're calling My Computer.
Yep.
From a System 2 architectural perspective, this is the most aggressive and consequential structural shift in the entire March 17th intelligence drop.
Let's lay out the mechanical facts of what Meta just executed. Back in December, Meta quietly acquired Manus, a highly advanced agentic startup out of China, for $2 billion.
A massive acquisition.
And the culmination of that acquisition is My Computer, a desktop application that literally moves Meta's cloud-based AI agent directly onto your local machine.
We have to deconstruct what onto your local machine actually means in this context.
Yeah.
For the last several years, consumer AI has existed within the sandbox of a web browser. You open a tab, you type a prompt, the prompt goes to a cloud server, the server thinks, and it sends text back to your browser window.
The AI has absolutely no awareness of what is on your actual computer.
Exactly. The My Computer architecture breaks that sandbox entirely. It operates via local terminal access.
And this is where my forensic alarms just started screaming.
Oh, mine too.
Giving an AI local terminal access means giving it the keys to the operating system. The documentation states that this agent has direct native access to read, sort, and edit files natively on your hard drive.
It's incredible power.
It can dive into your deeply buried, unsorted folders. It can batch rename 1,000 private invoices. It can write, compile, and package executable applications autonomously on your machine.
And furthermore, it is designed to tap into your machine's local hardware, your CPU and GPU, when they are sitting idle, to run background jobs or complete complex tasks that you assign to it remotely from your phone.
In infrastructure architecture, we refer to this as local terminal orchestration.
Right.
The question you have to ask is, why? Why is Mark Zuckerberg spending $2 billion to bypass the cloud and put an autonomous agent directly into your local terminal?
Because Meta is losing the cloud war.
Exactly.
The intelligence briefings explicitly note that Meta is utilizing Manus as a strategic opportunity to gain a foothold precisely because they currently lack a dominating enterprise-grade frontier model of their own to compete with OpenAI's new B2B dominance.
That is the exact strategic calculus. If you can't win a war of sheer intellectual compute power in the cloud, you fundamentally change the battlefield.
Right. Meta realizes that the ultimate context window is not a massive text prompt. The ultimate context window is the user's actual physical hard drive.
By executing locally through Manus, Meta bypasses the cloud bottleneck entirely. They are effectively commandeering your idle desktop and turning it into a distributed inference node in their own decentralized network. But the sheer audacity of it, it is a brilliantly executed Trojan horse. Meta is essentially looking at the consumer and saying, we concede that we might not have the absolute smartest frontier model living in a billion-dollar data center, but we don't need the smartest brain in the cloud so long as we hold the root access keys to your local file system.
It's a land grab.
But let's look at the catastrophic downside here. giving a cloud-tethered autonomous agent terminal access to my unstructured data, my unsorted family photos, my raw tax documents, my private email archives. That sounds like the ultimate compliance and privacy nightmare.
Oh, it is an unmitigated governance disaster waiting to happen.
As Manus and other agents gain direct local terminal access to read and edit your files, the governance gap is widening. AIRA is the essential bridge here, providing the enterprise guardrails to ensure local My Computer agents don't exceed their mission parameters or leak sensitive PII.
Because without those robust enterprise-grade guardrails, you are exposing your entire unstructured data environment to a machine that operates thousands of times faster than human oversight.
All right.
If we tie this local terminal orchestration strategy back to the broader cybersecurity landscape, it perfectly validates the deeply pessimistic warnings issued by Gartner at their recent Sydney summit.
Let's unpack the Gartner 2028 cybersecurity forecast, because the numbers they are projecting are terrifying for anyone managing IT infrastructure. What exactly are they predicting as these autonomous agents take over the local terminal?
Gartner is forecasting that by the year 2028, a staggering 50% of all major cybersecurity incidents will be driven directly by custom-built autonomous AI applications executing tasks they were not properly constrained against.
Half of all incidents. That's insane.
But the more insidious metric they released is their warning regarding the rest of the decade. They project that through 2030, 33% of all IT operational work will be spent purely on securing and mitigating what they have coined AI data debt.
AI data debt. That is a brilliant, terrifying conceptual framework. Let's break down the mechanics of what that actually means for an enterprise or a consumer.
AI data debt refers to the massive invisible accumulation of unclassified, deeply embedded files and local data modifications that AI agents generate over time.
Right.
Imagine Manus operating on your local terminal for a year. It is constantly reading PDFs, generating hidden cache files, duplicating invoice records to train its local context, and rewriting script executions in the background.
It creates this sprawling subterranean labyrinth of unstructured data that the human user is completely unaware of.
Exactly. There's no oversight. There's no proper classification of what is sensitive and what is benign.
So the threat matrix entirely shifts. If Manus has persistent terminal access and is generating mountains of AI data debt in the background, the attack surface for a threat actor, whether that's a foreign intelligence service or a ransomware syndicate, is no longer a distant fortified cloud server.
No.
The attack surface is your sovereign desktop.
Precisely. I mean, why would a threat actor try to penetrate a militarized AI data center guarded by $300,000 Ghost Robotics dogs and 1 billion quantum shields when they can simply target the local endpoint?
Right.
If they compromise the Manus agent running on your laptop, they inherit root terminal access to your entire digital life. The fortification of the cloud forces the vulnerability down to the endpoint.
Let's synthesize all of these architectural shifts, because the narrative arc we forensically reconstructed today is incredibly clear, and it fundamentally reorganizes how we must view the tech landscape.
We have officially, permanently exited the theoretical, consumer-friendly training phase of artificial intelligence.
The era of the digital parlor trick is over. We are operating in a ruthless new reality.
A reality defined by a $1 trillion transition into inference-first economics.
Right. The demand for deterministic decoding is so severe, and the thermal constraints are so absolute, that Nvidia and SpaceX are physically blasting AI infrastructure into the vacuum of low Earth orbit to build an untouchable, solar-powered inference mesh.
While simultaneously back on Earth, terrestrial infrastructure has become so vital to national and corporate sovereignty that data centers require autonomous, sensor-laden robotic dogs to secure their perimeters against physical sabotage.
And this entire militarized orbital infrastructure is being funded by a brutal corporate consolidation. The tech giants are violently abandoning consumer novelty.
They're actively massacring the API wrappers.
They're retreating from the massive capital expenditure of building data centers, shifting to leasing models, and embedding themselves deeply into the lucrative, wrapper-free, B2B enterprise bedrock.
And finally, to outflank that very consolidation, we are witnessing companies like Meta execute local terminal orchestration.
Yeah.
They are bypassing the fortified cloud entirely, orchestrating operations directly on your local terminal and turning your idle, unguarded personal hardware into their own decentralized inference engine.
It is a systemic, vertical reorganization of how computing power is generated, cooled, guarded, and deployed. which leaves you sitting there looking at your own computer screen today with one final, deeply unsettling structural question to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If Meta's Manus agent is actively running terminal commands on your desktop's file system while you sleep, and Nvidia's orbital modules are processing the global economy's data in the vacuum of space, who actually maintains sovereignty over your digital life?
That's the question.
If you want to go even deeper into the architecture of these shifts, the high-density technical version of this briefing is available ads-free on the DjamgaMind feed.
That concludes our rundown for March 17th. The signal for today is computational sovereignty. From local terminal agents to orbital hardware, the winners of 2026 are those who control the execution layer. This episode was made possible by Area and DjamgaMind. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.